Hello there, thrill seekers. That was a little piece of a song called Angry Generation, originally credited to the Woodchucks, which was actually a pseudonym for Lee Hazelwood, who was a collaborator with Nancy Sinatra on such big hits as These Boots Are Made for Walkin' and what was the other one? Jackson. That was a good one, too. He'd recorded that in 1970 when surf music was really, really dead and would not get revived again until the 80s. So who knows why you did a surf record at that time. But stay tuned to the end of the clip because I cut it off before the good part of the riff. So because people complain when the intros are too long. So you'll see the full riff at the end. And I'll do the whole song one of these days, if you care. So I got a comment that I wanted to talk about. Whoops, no, there it goes. It went away. Okay, here it is. I got a comment on a video that I made. Well, I guess it was the previous video I made called The Power of Now is Wrong, which doesn't actually say The Power of Now is wrong or say The Power of Now is a bad book or Eckhart Tolle is a bad person or any of that. So go watch the video to see what I actually said. It's a little bit of a clickbait title, but you got to do that anyway. So the comment goes, how do I know any of these gurus, in scare quotes, aren't just delusional or dishonest? People just seem to accept whatever a guru says as long as the community agrees they're a real, in scare quotes, guru. But what's the requirement for that? I still don't understand what's even the point of enlightenment. It's the most vague, meaningless, self-contradicting concept that people spend their entire lives trying to achieve. If there's nothing to achieve, there's nothing to achieve. Stop acting like it makes sense to say nothing can be achieved since it's already achieved. Like, say what you mean and stop using metaphors. It almost seems purposely, which is in all caps, so I shouted it, confusing and ambiguous. I only believe this stuff because I was suicidal when they introduced me to it. Okay, so, and my reply to that was, okay, you should probably just do something else. Which, I'm not trying to be facetious or weird or funny. That's my honest reply to this person who wrote that. What can I say about this? I am not trying to sell enlightenment. So sometimes when I see statements like this, I think that the people who write them are assuming that I'm trying to sell enlightenment or trying to, get them to want enlightenment. And I'm really not. You're either interested in that sort of thing or you're not. And I don't think there's much point in sort of trying to, do the way advertisers do, try to create a hunger for that thing. Either you have the hunger for that or you don't. And if you don't, just don't bother with it. That would be my advice to anybody who's watching. I can just kind of tell you my own take on this, which is that, and I've written about this in books and things, so regular viewers have heard me say this before, but here we go again. When I was younger, a young person, a child, I looked at the world and I thought, this is weird. What is this place? Why am I here? What's the point of all this? Is there a point to all this? And what should I do about it? What should I do with this life I've been given? And the whole thing. So this was a driving desire, I suppose. We could, all suffering comes from desire, said the Buddha. And so part of my suffering in life came from the desire to understand who and what I am, what this world is, and what's the best way to live in this world. And I was probably obsessed with that from a very young age. I can remember, I remember first thinking about this when we still lived in Kenya, and we moved over there when I was 7 or something like that. So, it could have been 7 or 8 years old, maybe 10 at the most, when I started to obsess about this sort of thing. Sorry. So yeah, and then when I came across Buddhism and there was this idea within Buddhism of enlightenment, I thought, oh, okay, that seems like something that might satisfy this strong desire I had. Now, of course, I'm going to say it again because I already said it, but I'll say it again. The cause of suffering is desire. So that I want to just put that out there. My teacher, Nishijima Roshi, rejected that formulation, the cause of suffering is desire, because he said you can't get away from desire, you can't extinguish desire, which I think is true. I think he was right. But I think there is still some truth to that way of putting was it the first noble truth? The second noble truth, yeah. I think there's some value in putting it that way, even though I agree with my teacher that it's not really correct. But, so I was suffering from having this desire. I discovered Zen Buddhism, and I had a teacher who was in the Soto tradition, which is the tradition that doesn't emphasize enlightenment or as a goal. They don't emphasize that what you're trying to achieve with this practice is enlightenment. Dogen very famously said the practice is enlightenment. But the teacher who taught, for those of you who don't know, my first introduction to Buddhism came while taking a class called Zen Buddhism at Kent State University. And the teacher of that course, even though his main teacher was a Soto teacher, and he pretty much was a Soto Zen guy, he was teaching a university course, so he wanted to cover all the bases. And one of the books he assigned was The Three Pillars of Zen by Philip Kapleau. And he assigned that to give us students a perspective on the Rinzai tradition, or the Rinzai way of dealing with Zazen and enlightenment, among other things. Now, you could argue that maybe that's not good because Philip Kapleau considered himself to be a Soto teacher, but the lineage that Philip Kapleau followed, really, their practice is basically Rinzai style practice. It seems more stereotypically Rinzai than some of the actual Rinzai practice I've encountered, such as the practice that they did at Mount Baldy when Joshu Sasaki Roshi was there, who was a Rinzai teacher. But I feel like Kapleau was more stereotypically Rinzai. Anyway, that book, The Three Pillars of Zen, has a lot of descriptions of enlightenment experiences. This was sort of revolutionary at the time. Revolutionary is probably making too big of a deal of it, but it was unusual at the time because the thing in Zen, in both Soto and Rinzai Zen, so this includes Rinzai Zen, as far as I know, Shozan, if you're watching, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is to not talk about enlightenment experiences. There's this experience called Kensho or Satori, and it's much more valued in the Rinzai tradition than it is in the Soto tradition, but even the Rinzai tradition says you don't talk about it, and the Soto tradition for sure says you don't talk about it. It's just not something... It's considered not really good to talk about it because all you can say about that experience becomes metaphorical, no matter what you do. So this commenter said something like, it seems purposely confusing, say what you mean and stop using metaphors. Well, everything you say is a metaphor, but it's especially true with talking about these kind of experiences because so few people have these experiences that all you can do is try to compare them to other things that your listener may be acquainted with, and so you're forced to use metaphors. It's like that Star Trek The Next Generation episode, what's the one where he says... Dharmak. I had to go look it up. Where they say Dharmak and Jalad at Tanagra. Go look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. It kind of gets into the way language is always metaphorical, and it kind of puts the I don't know, the lie to the whole idea of the universal translator. That's a big deal of Star Trek lore, where you can understand everybody because you have this universal translator implanted in your brain or something. I don't know where they put it. Anyway, yeah. So everything you say is a metaphor. Anything is a metaphor. I mean, when you really get down to it, but especially when you're getting into this stuff. So I read that book and I started to want one of those experiences for myself. And I was lucky enough to have two teachers who kind of put me off this idea of trying to have that experience of enlightenment, of doing my practice in order to gain something called enlightenment. So, it was probably always in the back of my mind, but I told this story recently that I had somebody in my life who was a born-again Christian who was trying to get me off the Zen path. This person talked to Tim, my first teacher, and she said that Tim told her Brad will never be enlightened. And then she reported this to me with great glee, like, oh, you're an idiot for trying to do this. You'll never be enlightened. Even your Zen teacher says so. And I was already so committed to the Zen practice, and I could see the value in Zen practice to such an extent that I wasn't about to quit. So I decided, okay, well, if I'm never going to be enlightened, my quest on my Zen practice, or through my Zen practice, will be to understand fully the unenlightened state. Like, I'm going to totally understand the unenlightened state. So I kind of made that my way, and as I told the story later on, it turned out that Tim told me that I didn't ask about Tim about this immediately. I asked him about it like 5 years later or something. And he said, I don't remember saying that, but if I said it, it was because her ideas of enlightenment were so bizarre that nobody could ever achieve that, and that he wasn't trying to say that I was singularly incapable of enlightenment. But anyway, it already did the trick to hear that. So it was great to hear that, and I actually really appreciate the fact that I learned that lesson. So, yeah, what else can I say about this? How do you know these gurus aren't just delusional or dishonest? Well, in the Zen tradition, there's no guru. So I've never studied with a guru. And my understanding of the guru tradition is that often the idea is you are supposed to accept what the guru tells you unconditionally. You're supposed to have total faith in the guru. That's my understanding of it. Somebody who follows that tradition can comment and tell me I'm wrong if you want. That's my understanding. That is not the way Zen is approached. So you're not supposed to accept what your teacher says unquestioningly. And any Zen teacher who promotes it that way, I think is getting it wrong. And certainly neither of my teachers promoted it that way. So yeah, how do you know if you're a guru, or let's say your Zen teacher? How do I know my Zen teacher isn't delusional or dishonest? Well, I spent a lot of time with both of them. And if you spend a lot of time with somebody, you tend to be able to make a judgment about whether they're delusional or dishonest. Of course, that judgment could be wrong, so maybe my judgment about them was wrong. But after spending a lot of time with them, I didn't see them doing other things that were delusional or dishonest. So I had to conclude that what they were saying about the Zen practice was also not delusional or dishonest. But again, neither of them was promoting it as a means to achieve enlightenment. So there you go. It's kind of off topic, I suppose, from what this guy is asking. I still don't understand what's even the point of enlightenment. It's the most meaningless, self-contradicting, vague concept that people spend their entire lives trying to achieve. Well, yeah, it can be, because a lot of times enlightenment is ill-defined. It has to be ill-defined. So because you can't pin it down. You can't. It's something. It is the thing that can't be pinned down. I think if you acknowledge that there is something about this life, some underlying truth in this life that resists being pinned down or defined in any really specific way, then you can accept the idea of enlightenment. I don't know where I was going with that. What I meant to say is I discovered that there is something within my experience, my real experience right now, that can't be pinned down or defined in any way. There is somebody who is experiencing me talking into this little microphone here and making a video for all of you folks. So what is this something? It can't be pinned down. Every attempt I have come across to try to explain what it is, what that something that experiences this world is, the something that I call me, they don't work for me. They aren't good explanations, including explanations drawn from Buddhism. At best, they're metaphors. They might be what the Advaita tradition calls pointers. You're getting pointed at this. The finger pointing at the moon is the metaphor in Zen. So don't get fixated on the finger. Just, the finger is pointing at the moon. If you do that with a cat, this is something Tim, my first Zen teacher, says. The cats are great examples because they'll look right at your finger. Anyway, so that's so you can't pin it down. You can't say what it is. And if you believe, as I've come to believe, that underlying something may be the most important thing, then trying to understand what it is might be something you're interested in. And I am very interested in that. And I've come to the conclusion that there is a way to understand that, but there is no way to explain it. So, you're just stuck. So all you can do is make metaphors and do stuff like that. Stop acting like it makes sense to say nothing can be achieved since it's already achieved. This is for people who are interested in that and who are struggling with it. And if you're not struggling with it, then that's kind of meaningless for you. And as far as things being purposely confusing and ambiguous, my feeling after having practiced Zen for a long time and having had some of those experiences that I've been denying just for the last 10 minutes, I've come to see that my teachers and the great literature of the past and stuff by Dogen or Huang Po or whoever you want to look at in the tradition of the good ones, Nisargadatta Maharaj, he's not in the Zen tradition, but I like him. They're not being purposely ambiguous and obscure. That's one thing that dawned on me, and it took 15 years at least for that to dawn on me, maybe 20. When I finally realized, they're not being deliberately ambiguous. They're saying this as straightforwardly as anyone can. And this is why I like Dogen so much, why he's kind of my favorite. Huang Po is a close second. Huang Po and Dogen are always vying it out for my favorites. But this is why I like them, especially Dogen, because I think he's probably gotten the closest anyone can get to putting this stuff into words. And it's hopelessly confusing. What can I tell you? That's just the nature of it. Now, one of my favorite stories about my first Zen teacher was that his teacher, Kobun Chino, this is something my first Zen teacher told me, he said that somebody asked Kobun, what is the most important thing about Zen practice, Zazen practice, I think. And Kobun said, you don't have to do it. That I think is lovely. So you don't have to do it. You don't have to be interested in it. I'm not going to try to make you interested in it if you're not interested in it. If you are interested in it, like I am, then I've been practicing with this Zen practice for a long time and reading a lot about it, and I may have something that I can share with you that might be valuable. But if you're not interested, you're just not interested. So, okay. So, go do something else. That's fine. Lots of people live entirely happy lives without ever setting foot in a Zendo or doing a practice of Zazen or any of that. So there you go. There's my answer for what's the point of enlightenment, or what's he say? Yeah, what's even the point of enlightenment? There you go. All right. If you want to donate to me doing more videos like this and confusing you more, you can go to the URL that you are about to see on the screen below, or that you're about to hear if you're listening to the audio version, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. That's where you'll find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are my main and usually my only ways of making a living, and I appreciate your support, but you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. By the way, the audition for that surf band that I mentioned in my previous video went very well. They want me to join, so I'll probably be joining this surf band led by a guy who played with and studied guitar under Dick Dale. So legend. It's actually a pretty good gig. All right, we're going to put a cameo by Ziggy, and then there'll be the rest of that riff afterwards. So see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey Ziggy, how you doing? You went to the vet yesterday, and you did not like that at all, but I think he helped you feel better, because you seem to be feeling better now that he did that stuff to you. All right, let's go listen to my guitar riff. Okay, Ziggy? Bye.